in the corner. Look, I thought I had them all, guys. Make sure, people, do I have all the worksheets? Okay. Once those keys go around, you can't turn them in anymore. You need to remember that. And if you walk in after I do this, you need to turn them in. Okay, so here's the problem. And so if you're going to have something like this in your test, what would be the first thing you would do? Distribute. Use distributive property. So it'll be step one. So there are 3 areas where you can use distributive property. So negative 5 times x. And then what's the next term? Minus 5, because a negative 5 times a positive 1 is a negative 5, so subtract 5. Over here, what would you distribute? Positive 4. So what's the third term going to be? Plus 8x. What's the fourth term going to be? Minus 12. Equal. Over here, what do you get? Say it again. Distribute 2. Then tell me what you get. Write it. Go ahead.
2x plus 4.
Minus what?
Minus
8. So common mistake people make, and some of you did that on a worksheet. You said 2 times negative 8 and you wrote negative 16. That's not true. The only thing being multiplied by this 2 here is what's inside the parentheses. So use these arrows like that if you need to. So that's 2x plus 4 minus 8. So the first thing you did was use distributive property because you had parentheses. Now what's the next step? Combine like terms. On the left side, let's combine like terms. What 2 terms are alike here? Let's do the variables first. Negative 5x and a positive 8x. What's that? 3x. Now your constants. Negative 17, so 3x minus 17. Okay? Equal. Over here, what can I combine? The constants. Good. So that's 2x minus 4. So that's where we're at.
Okay, so may I say something, please?
Yes.
You know, you just clarified for me with the last word where I was getting kind of confused at, because I understand that 2 negatives means a positive, right?
I don't know what you mean by that. 2 negatives mean a positive. What do you mean by that?
You put 2 negatives together, you write down a positive,
Where you see 2 negatives at?
negative 5 and negative 12.
Negative 5 and negative 12 is not a positive 17. So
So
when
it's
you
not
say
positive.
and some of you are saying that, I told you not to do that. When you say 2 negatives is a positive, you got to tell me what operation you're performing. A negative times a negative is a positive. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. Okay? A negative plus a negative is not a positive. What's a negative plus a negative? A negative. All right, so if you're having that issue, I need for you to do one of 2 things. Google how to deal with signed numbers, or go back to your book and look at the section from last semester in Math 97.
So only addition doesn't change.
I'm not sure what you mean by only addition does not change. What do you mean by that?
Doesn't change it to be from 2 negatives to be a positive.
Okay, you keep using that phrase. I don't want you to use that phrase
What
anymore.
phrase do you want me to use?
I want you to use the phrase using operations.
Operations?
Yes.
Okay, like negative or positive operations, or just say operations?
Addition, multiplication, subtraction, division.
So when you say, about the operations, are you saying like the negative 5 plus 8x minus 12, or are you saying negative 5 and negative 12 is considered the operation?
No, you're supposed to say something like a negative 5 plus a negative 12. Those are like terms.
Okay. So a negative 5 plus a negative 12, which is like terms. If we're adding the like terms together, it doesn't change.
If the signs are the same, you keep the sign.
And is that only for addition? If I was doing multiplication,
Multiplication, the rules are different. If to multiply 2 numbers, the signs are the same. it's positive. Multiply two number signs are different, it's negative.
Thank you for reiterating.
You're welcome. What's the next step?
Get your variable on top.
Yeah, so what's the next step? So what are you gonna do?
And get a variable on top.
Tell me what you're gonna do though. What you gonna
Add
write?
17. So 17.
Okay, so you want to do that first? All right, so we're going to add 17 to both sides. That's what I want you to say. All right, so there's the addition property of equality. Now what's the next step?
Combine terms.
Combine like terms. So when I combine like terms, a negative 17 and a positive 17 is 0. What's left over here? 3x equal. All right, when I combine like terms over here, what's that expression on the right-hand side?
Plus 13.
2x plus 13, because a negative 4 and a positive 17 is a positive 13. Okay, now you got to bring the variables to the other side now. So meaning that if you're strategic, are you going to bring the variables to the right? Or you're going to bring the variables to the left? To the left. Okay, now you can bring the variables to the right, but that's not a strategic approach. You want to bring the variables to the left. So you're going to subtract 2x. Very good. Because if you add 2x, that's going to help you. Because what's 2x plus 2x? 4x. So you can subtract 2x. So again, that's the addition property of equality, what I just did. What's the next step? Okay, tell me what that next step is called though. Combine like terms. Okay, combine like terms. So it's 3x subtract 2x. X equal, what's 2x subtract 2x? 0, and what's left? 13. So x equals 13. That's your solution. So if you were to take that 13, put it back into the original problem, the left side's going to equal the right side.
Now, why wouldn't it be strategic to,
Bring it to the other side.
yes,
All right. It's just more steps. So if you subtract 3x from both sides, people mess up there. So they'll think that nothing goes here, but what should go here? You see, that's where you're messing up. That's why I said you need to be strategic about this. What's 3x minus 3x? 0. 0 goes there. Okay? What's 2x minus 3x? Nope. See, that's another mistake you're making. 2x minus 3x is not x. What's 2x minus 3x? Negative x. So you see the errors you're making here because you didn't be strategic. You weren't strategic about this. And then that's plus what? 13. That's what you get if you bring the variables to the other side. Now, what's the next step? Nope, that's not the next step. What's the next step? You got to get the variable by itself. So what are you going to do? You add x to both sides. Now, listen to me. What you see how you're kind. Some of you know what to do here. Some of you are struggling. So what I need for you to do is to write those same problems over and do them without looking at these notes. Okay? That's what I did when I was in school. That's how I learned. Okay? So if you don't do that, you're still going to struggle. All right. So the next step is to add x to both sides. What's 0 plus x? Equal. Negative x and x is 0. What's left? You get the same answer. Which one is easier to deal with? This side. Okay? All right. So that's what I meant by more strategic. But notice how, not just you, but many, I shouldn't say many of you, some of you did not know that 3x minus 3x was 0, that 0 went there. And some of you did not know that 2x minus 3x was a negative x. And when we got to that point, some of you didn't know what to do at that point. The whole thing we've been doing since last week was to get the variable by itself. All right, so the variable x is not by itself. It's attached with this plus 13. So you have to add x to both sides.
that's just making it harder than it
Right here, yes. Yeah. So you got to be a little bit strategic, and you get better at this as you do more of the problems. So you just started working on this. So as you do more and more of these problems, you get better at it.
There's practice questions on my math lab also.
Uh-huh.
which is good.
Yeah. Yeah. So the purpose of the worksheets is to get you that practice to be able to do it on the test. So you struggle on the worksheets, but don't struggle on the test. All right, we're going to do one more in this section because we're running behind here. Let's look at number 34. Okay, 34. You have 5 times 3 plus z, subtract 8z plus 9, equal a negative 4z. All right, but some of you at this point need to write those problems again and do them without looking at the notes. All right, what's the first step you're going to do here? All right, so you're probably going to be okay with the first one, this right here. What is this going to be?
15 plus 5z.
15, yes, I'm sorry. 15 plus 5z, right? All right. Now a few of you may mess up here and not remember what to do. What do you distribute here? Negative 1. Okay. So what does that become? Minus 9, good. And that's equal to negative 4z. So that's where I'm at. So I use distributive property. What's the next step? Combine like terms. So on the left side, which terms are alike? Let's start with the variables. A positive 5z and a negative 8z. What's a positive 5z and a negative 8z? Negative 3z. Good. Okay? Negative 3z. Well, be careful. That's 15 and a negative 9. So what are your constants when combined? Plus 6. All agree? Equal negative 4z. All right, so that's where we're at. All right. And then what's the next step? Get the variables to one side. So what are you going to do?
Plus,
Add. So right now, see, if you subtract 3z, that's not going to help you because what's a negative 3z and a negative 3z? No, not 0.
negative 60.
If they're opposites, they become 0. When you add them up, they get 0. But a negative 3z and a negative 3z are not opposites. What's a negative 3z and another negative 3z? Negative 6z. That doesn't help you. You want to get 0 there. So are you going to add or subtract 3z? You're going to add 3z. What you do to one side, you do to the other. That's the addition property of equality. And now what's the next step? What's that phrase? Combine like terms. A negative 3z plus 3z is 0. What's left here? 6. Equal. Now what's a negative 4z and a positive 3z? Negative z. Now I'm going to write this though as negative 1z.
If I was to write negative 1z, will I get that wrong until I get in the hang of writing just z?
Say it again?
Well, if I was to write like you had wrote the negative 1z.
Well, you're going to write negative 1z here to remind you that what's the next step? So what are you going to do to both sides now? Divide both sides by negative 1. All right, so remember, you want to get z by itself. Z is not by itself. What do you see here? A negative z, right? You see a negative z. So to get z by itself, you got to first of all remember that a negative z is the same thing as negative 1 times z. So you got to divide. Multiplication property equality is what you're going to use next. And so the multiplication property equality, you're going to divide both sides by the coefficient. What's the coefficient? What is it here though? Negative 1. So right now multiplying by negative 1, the opposite is to divide by negative 1. And then a negative 1 divided by negative 1 is 1. Anything divided by itself is 1. Okay. All right, make a note of that. And then 1 times z is z. And then what's 6 divided by negative 1? Negative 6.
On our worksheet, if we wrote it that way instead of the variable in the front.
That's fine.
Okay.
Because negative 6 equals z, you can always transpose an equation. Negative 6 equals z means the same thing as z equals a negative 6. You're just transposing the sides. So 2 equal, it's kind of like, I'm using the word transposing. 2 plus 3 equal 5 is the same as 5. I'm sorry, 2 plus 3 is the same as 5 equals 2 plus 3, right? You just transpose the sides. Okay? All right. Now let's look at this one. So this is number 18, and this is on page 639. And this is section 9.2. 9.2. So we're kind of doing 9.1, 9.2 together, the multiplication property equality, the addition property equality. So this is number 18. Looks like this. We have 3x minus 1 equal 26. Now the directions will say show work as presented in class. So if you're doing the work as presented in class, what should be the next step? Add 1 to both sides. Okay? Always do the multiplication property equality last. Multiplication property equality should be done last. So we can use the addition property equality first. So I need to get the variable by itself, right? So I got to get 3x by itself. Right now I'm subtracting 1. What's the opposite of subtracting 1? So what I do to one side, I do to the other. So that's the addition property of equality. Now once you do the addition property of equality, what's the next step? Combine like terms. So when I combine like terms, what's on the left side? Negative 1 to positive 1, that's there. Those are opposites. So when I add them, I get 0. And what's left? 3x equal 27. So that's where I'm at. Yeah, so now the term involving x is by itself. The term, I didn't say x is by itself, I said the term involving x is by itself, but it's not x, it's 3x. 3 times x. So what's the opposite of multiplying by 3? Divide by 3. So you always divide by the coefficient. So you can divide both sides by 3, just like this. 3 divided by 3 is 1. So that's x equal 9. So that's your solution. Okay, so this part here was the multiplication property of equality. Always do the multiplication property of equality last. And then what I did to go from here to here was simplify. That's what I did. To go from that part to that part. So that's where I said 3 divided by 3 is 1. 1 times x is x. 27 divided by 3 is 9. All right. Now, we got to remember something from last semester. So if you have 4/5 divided by 2/3, 4/5 divided by 2/3, how'd you divide those two fractions? Because you're dividing fractions here. What you changed what kind of problem? Multiplication. So you rewrote the fraction in the numerator, and then you said times the reciprocal of the fraction in the denominator, which is 3/2. Okay? So then you can reduce first or you can multiply first. Does not matter. So 4 times 3 is 12. 5 times 2 is 10. And then you can reduce. They're both divisible by 2. So that's what? 6/5. Okay? All right. Now let's look at number 8. Number 8. You have 3/4 n equals negative 15. 3/4 n equals negative 15. All right. So the term involving the variable is by itself. What's the coefficient? 3/4. So to get the variable by itself, what do I need to do to both sides? Why are you saying subtract? Right now, listen to my words, okay? Listen to my words. Right now, what am I doing to the variable? Multiplying it by what? 3/4. What is the opposite of multiplication? Division. Isn't 3/4 a coefficient? So if you're going to get rid of the coefficient, you have to use what operation? Division. Division. Then you'll just do that here. When I had 3x, did I subtract 3x from both sides, or did I divide both sides by 3? I divided.
That was like the last, I thought you did the addition, subtraction first, and then you did the multiplication division last.
Well, yeah, you do the addition property of equality first because there was an addition part here.
Right, so what were your instructions only to use the,
No, the instructions are to solve. Solve the equation. That's the instructions. Solve the equations. So to solve this equation, the only thing you're going to do to get the variable by itself is to divide both sides by 3/4. The direction says to solve.
so how do you know if you only use that one as opposed to the other?
What do you see here?
I'm just saying, like,
No,
everyone
what
said
do
the
you
same
see
thing,
here?
Add or something, subtract, so.
Because everyone we've done before had something like a +2 or -3 in it. Do you
Right.
see on this side anything that says 3/4 n plus 7?
So basically, this is what it looks like at the end, when you've done all this stuff.
Yes.
This is kind of like the last step.
More the last step, that's correct. Okay?
So-
So what is the next step you're going to do?
Divide by 3/4 on each side.
Divide both sides by 3/4. So here's how it's going to look. Okay? And so 3/4 divided by 3/4 is 1. 1 times n is n. Now, we just reviewed this. How do I deal with this?
You have to multiply it by the reciprocal.
Multiply by the reciprocal. So what's the numerator?
4.
What's the numerator? -15 over 1 times the reciprocal of the denominator,
So 4 over
4 over 3. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and reduce here. 3 into 3 is 1. 3 into 15 is 5. And now I can multiply numerators. -5 times 4.
Negative 20,
1 times 1.
1.
And then simplify that. What's -20 divided by 1? -20. So your solution is n equals -20. That's the solution. So you did not you did not use the addition property of equality because the term was already by itself. In most of the problems we've done, the term was not by itself. You had +3 or -5 attached to it. So in which case you had to use the addition property of equality. Yes.
Can you go over the multiplying or fraction again?
Okay, I'm gonna do it one more time. Okay. 7/4 divided by 2/3. I take the fraction in the numerator, which is 7/4. I multiply by the reciprocal of the denominator. The reciprocal of 2/3 is 3/2. I reduce if I can. I cannot reduce here. So I multiply numerators across. 7 times 3 is 21. 4 times 2 is 8. Okay? That's all you do. So if you're still having issues, I'll tell you what chapter it's in at the end of the class. So you can look at that, okay? All right. Let's look at number... Let's see, number 36. Number 36. All right, 36, you have this. All right, you have 2 times 4x plus 1 equals -12 plus 6. All right, what's the first step you're going to do? All right, you got parentheses there, distribute. So I get, what do I get on this side? 8x plus 2 equal, I'm going to just go ahead and rewrite the other side. Okay, so all I did was distribute a property, rewrote everything else. Now, what's the next step? Combine like terms. Can I combine like terms? On which side? The right side. What's -12 plus 6? Not 6, -6. So y'all some of you are still having trouble with signed numbers. I suggest use your calculator. until you can do it in your head. Because you put 6, you're going to get a wrong answer. This solution going to be wrong. So 8x plus 2 equal negative 6. All right, now, am I going to use, now first of all, let me ask you this, is the variable terms on both sides or just one side? Just one side. So to get that term by itself, am I going to have to use the addition property of equality? Yes, because there's a plus 2 there. If it was just 8x, then I would divide both sides by what? 8. All right, but since there's a plus 2, I've got to use the addition property of equality. Okay? All right, so what's the next step? Subtract 2. Good. Subtract 2, because right now you're adding 2. The opposite of adding 2 is to subtract 2. So always think the phrase of the opposite of. Then you can combine like terms. 2 and a negative 2 is 0. What's left on the left? Okay. Now, what's a negative 6 plus a negative 2? Negative 8. Negative 8. Now, what property do I have to use next? Multiplication property of equality. So to get x by itself, I'm going to divide both sides by the coefficient, because right now I'm multiplying. This says 8 times x. So you get this 8's coefficient. So that's why one of the worksheets talked about coefficients. So the opposite of multiplication is division. So remember, you want to get a 1x here. You want to get an x. So the only way you can do that is divide both sides by 8. 8 divided by 8 is 1. 1 times x is x. What's the negative 8 divided by positive 8? Negative 1. So that's your solution.
When you say the coefficient, you always want to get a positive on the, like when you get it to the x, you always want it to be positive.
Yes.
So you always divide by, if it's 8x, you divide by 8x, not negative like on the addition property.
No.
We always do the same.
Because
Okay.
8 divided by negative 8 is not 1.
Right.
Okay, you need a 1 there.
Well, what if it was a negative 8x, then you would divide by
Negative 8.
Because it's the same, it's still the same.
Negative 8 divided by negative 8 is a positive 1. Yep. All right, let's look at, let's see, let's do 44. 44. All right, now that one may be a little bit challenging for some of you because it has a fraction in it. So 1/3 times 3x minus 1 equal negative 1/10 minus 2/10. Negative 1/10 minus 2/10. Negative 1/10 minus 2/10. All right, now it really is not that bad. If you can do 36 without too much difficulty, then you should be able to do 44. What's the first step? Distribute. Okay, now you got to remember, you're saying 1/3 times 3x. What's 1/3 times 3? 1. That's 1 right here. And what's 1 times x? X. So what's 1/3 times 3x here? That's x. And then what's 1/3 times a negative 1? Negative 1/3. Okay, so that's what I get there. So I'm going to write everything else over because all I wanted to do at this point was just use the distributive property. All right, once you do the distributive property, what's the next thing we did? Combine like terms.
So the term on the right.
Terms on the right. Now that one's not that bad because what do you notice about those two fractions? The denominators are the same. So in your mind, you're saying a negative 1/10 plus a negative 2/10, right? Because subtraction is a good idea to always change subtraction to what kind of problem? Addition from last semester. And so what is a negative 1/10 and a negative 2/10? Negative 3/10. So the right side's a negative 3/10. So I have x minus 1/3 equals a negative 3/10. So that's where I'm at. Okay? All right. Now, the variable term only appears on the right side. I'm sorry, the left side. So let's get that by itself. So what will I need to do to both sides? Add 1/3 to both sides, because right now you're subtracting 1/3. So you're going to say, and you did something like this in the last class period. You can do that, and then you can combine that. Remember, this is the addition property of equality. And now once you do the addition property of equality, the next step is to do what? Combine like terms. What's the negative 1/3 plus 1/3? 0. What's on the left? X. All right. Now, one of two things you can do. On a test, you don't have time to actually do this by hand, so use your calculator. Negative 3/10 plus 1/3. So go ahead and do your calculator with this. So negative 3 divided by 10 plus 1/3 plus 1 divided by 3. What do I press? Equal. So I get this decimal. How do I change it to a fraction? Second. PRB. Equal. And you get this. Is that a mixed number right here? No. It's what kind of fraction? You may not remember the word, but hopefully you do. Proper fraction. A proper fraction is where the numerator is smaller than the denominator. So what's the answer?
X equals 1/30.
1/30th, yep. Now if you did this by hand, you need to know how to do that. So you're saying negative 3/10 plus 1/3, right? So you got to find, now some of you still, based on one, at least one of you, I think it was just one of you, when the worksheet you turned in, you still said negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2, 10 plus 3 is 13. I don't know why you keep doing that. That's not what we do. What is it supposed to do when you add fractions that don't have unlike denominators? Or subtract fractions with unlike denominators? Find your LCD. What's the LCD of 10 and 3? 30. So you're going to write two fractions with that denominator. Now you're going to write equivalent fractions. 10 times what is 30? What I do to the denominator, I do to the numerator. Negative 3 times 3 is negative 9. 3 times what is 30? What I do to the denominator, I do to the numerator. So what's my numerator? 10. Now I add the fractions. So I'm going to have something divided by 30. Negative 9 plus 10 is 1. So that's what you got here. Okay?
It is much longer.
Huh?
It is much longer.
What, this?
Doing it that way.
Yeah, but you got to know both ways, though. That's the more tools you have in your mind, the easier it is for you to get through later math courses. All right. Okay, now look at this. Okay, so here's. Okay, so just kind of a quick review. This is an easy one. If I have 8x equal, let's say, 16. It's 6.1, 9.1, 9.2. It's both of them. Okay, how do you get the variable x by itself? Divide by 8. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just rewrite this like this. Divide by 8, and so your solution is what? 2. Okay? Now, what if I had this? Let's say we had 8x equal, let's say, 3. Oh, I'm sorry, did I mean that? 1/8 x equals 3. Now, we did something like that a while ago. I think you can still do this. How do you get the variable by itself? Divide by what? Yes, but you're going to say, you can divide both sides by what coefficient? 1/8. So nothing new. You had this already. So 1/8, right? And then you're going to simplify. So remember what I just used here was the multiplication property of equality. Now you're going to simplify. 1/8 divided by itself is 1. 1 times x is x. Equal. Now you got to remember, you're dividing two fractions because 3 is the same thing as 3 divided by 1. So you're going to take the top fraction, multiply by the reciprocal of the denominator. 8/1. Reduce if you can. It cannot reduce here, so let's multiply numerators and denominators together. 24 divided by 1. Don't leave it as 24 divided by 1. You need to know that 24 divided by 1 is 24. Okay? Now, what if you had this? So there are several problems in this section that's going to look like this. X divided by 8 equal 3. So what number divided by 8 is 3? You can look at this, tell me what the solution is. What number divided by 8 is 3? I thought you could. Come on, y'all. 24. 24 divided by 8 is 3.
I feel like you get frustrated with it.
When you can't you can't say 24 divided by 8 is 3?
I don't do mental math. I am a.
By fingers and toes?
And
Okay. All right. So 24 divided by 8 is 3. Well, that's 24 right here, right? So how else can you write x divided by 8? All right.
I understand.
24.
Yeah, but that we know the solution is 24, but what I want you to say is that the coefficient for this x right here, just this x in the numerator, is what? 1. So I can write this as 1/8 x equal 3, and that looks like this one. So if I have x divided by 7, that's the same thing as saying what? 1/7 x. So if I have x divided by 3, that's the same as what? 1/3 x. I need you to write it like that. Okay, so that's going to take us to this example now. All right, let's look at number. All right, this is going to be number 12.
Thank you.
All right, number 12. You have d divided by 15 equals 2.
Well, we finished the problem with the 1/8 x equals 3.
Well, it's the same as this one. So I didn't do it because it's the same as this one.
Okay.
You divide both sides by 1/8. Yeah, it's the same problem. So you're going to write, to do this problem, using the multiplication property of equality, what we learned in this section, you're going to rewrite this as 1/15 d. Now, in the next section, section 3, you're going to see another way to do this, but that's in section 3. All right, so again, the more tools you have in your mind, the better it is for you to get through college algebra. So you need to know several ways. So right now, you know, well, first of all, I can rewrite d divided by 15 as 1/15 d. And now that kind of looks like a problem we had a while ago. So what's the next step? Divide both sides by the coefficient. Coefficient is what? 1/15. And then you simplify. 1/15 divided by 1/15 is 1. 1 times d is d. Now how do you deal with this? So what do you write? 2/1 or 2, does not matter, times what? 15/1, so what's the answer? 30. Answer is 30. All right, let's look at 24. Huh? Yeah. 24. Are you finished with that one? Okay.
Yeah, I have a quick question. Since you're multiplying, when you actually divide both sides with a 1/15, wouldn't it, I mean, to take out a step, because you get the same answer the same way, couldn't you just multiply the 1/15 by reciprocal 15/1? and then
Yeah,
multiply by 2?
that's going to be the next section.
Oh, no, okay.
That's a good point. But it is the next section though.
Oh, okay.
You're too smart for this class. She was ahead in the next section. Wow.
She's probably ahead by 15 sections.
Probably.
All right, b divided by 4 minus 1 equal -7. What's the first step? get rid of the subtract 1. So you want to get the variable term by itself. So you're going to add 1 to both sides. Then combine like terms. What's on the left? Equal? -6. All right, now let's go ahead and rewrite b divided by 4 into something that looks like its coefficient, because the coefficient is not 1. Coefficient of b is not 1. What's the coefficient of b? 1/4. Okay? So on your test, you could be given this problem right here, and I could say, what's the coefficient? Some of you, not careful, you're going to say the coefficient is 1. It is not, because I can write this as 1/5 x, and we now know the coefficient is what? 1/5. Okay? So rewrite this as 1/4 b equal -6, and then one more step and you're done. What's the next step? Divide both sides by 1/4. And then reduce. So you get b equals, now rewrite this, so that's -6 over 1 times 4 over 1. What's the answer? -24, right? That's your solution.
Why can't you just take 4 and multiply times -6 and get your answer right?
That is the next section. Okay, you have to know both ways. All right, so the next section, you have a bunch of fractions with different denominators, and so the next section will say clear the fractions first. So that's going to be the next section, where you clear the fractions.
That's the 9.1 section.
9.3. All right, let's look at 74. 74. Okay, if x plus 3 divided by 7 equal -x plus 1/3 plus 4/7. So x plus 3 divided by 7 equal -x plus 1/3 plus 4/7. Okay, so what's be the first step? Combine terms. Now, where would you combine like terms? On which side?
Right side.
The right side. All right, now what two terms are alike on the right side? The constants, the fractions. So use your calculator. 1/3. Now remember, when you read this, it's positive 1/3, right? And that's a positive 4/7. So you're going to say 1 divided by 3. 1 divided by 3 plus what? 4 divided by 7 equal. Now what do I do next? Second PRB, press equal, and I get this fraction. So this right here, this when I add these two fractions, I get what fraction? 19/21. So I get x plus 3/7 equals -x plus 19 divided by 21. All right, so that's where I'm at. What's the next step? Okay, get the variables to one side. So you want to bring the variables to the left, or you want to bring the variables to the right? The left? Okay, if I'm bringing the variables to the left, that means I want to get rid of this. So is subtracting x or adding x going to help? Adding x. Because -x plus x is 0. But what I do to one side, I do to the other. Now, combine like terms. What's x plus x? Plus 3/7 equals, and what's left over here? 19/21. So that's where I'm at. Now, what's the next step? Constant to the other side. So what are you going to do? Subtract 3/7. Good. Because right now I'm adding 3/7. Okay? Then combine like terms. 3/7 and -3/7 is 0. What's left on the left? Okay, now use your calculator on the right. So 19 divided by 21 minus 3 divided by 7. So when you put that in your calculator, you get this decimal. This is the decimal you get. Make sure you get this decimal, 0.476190, and so on. Okay? How do you change that to a fraction?
PRB
Equal. and you get 10 divided by 21. So I get 10 divided by 21. So that's where I'm at. Uh-huh.
Why don't we do the LCD right there?
Why didn't I?
Yes, for the 19, and,
Because it's quicker to use a calculator.
okay, I see.
The LCD would be 21,
Oh,
right?
all right,
I didn't do it by hand. I just used a calculator
gotcha,
because of time.
gotcha.
All right.
Divide by 2.
Now divide both sides by 2. So we go ahead and rewrite this over. So I'm dividing both sides by 2, right? So 2 divided by 2 is 1. 1 times x is x. Now how do I deal with this? Is that you change the multiplication. So what's going to be the numerator? No. 10 divided by 21 times what? The reciprocal of 2. What's reciprocal of 2? 1 over 2. Okay, see where some of you messed that up. So make a note of that. Say a little note reminding yourself, I kind of messed that up. Okay, because this is 2 over 1, right? So you multiply by the reciprocal of the fraction that's in the denominator. 10, it's easier here to reduce first. So let's go ahead and reduce. 2 into 2 is 1. 2 into 10 is 5. So what's the answer? 5 over 21. So that's the answer. So use your calculator here, because if you had done this by hand, you would have had to find the LCD here, which is 21. And then you would end up getting this. So it'd been a lot of work here for some of you. And then here you would have had to find the LCD again, which is also 21. All right. So notice there's a lot of reviewing from last semester here. There's a lot of review here. Okay, let's do number, let's see, let's do,
Was that number 74?
yeah,
Okay.
all right, let's do 60. All right, 60. So the more of these you do, the better you get at it. Okay, 7 times 2x plus 1 equal 18x minus 19x.
Is it 18x?
Huh?
Is it 18x?
That's 18x. So what are you going to do first? Distribute. You distribute a property. So on the left side, I get what? Equal, and then I always rewrite over, but if you wanted to, you could have right away wrote the right-hand side as what? Negative 1x or negative x. But I'm going to just go ahead and rewrite it.
What did it say? I can't see the number.
14x plus 7 equals 18x minus 19x. All right, now once you do distributed property, what's the next step? Combine like terms. Where are the like terms?
On the right side.
So what is 18x subtract 19x? Negative 1x, or negative x. Okay, so that's where I'm at. Now, it does not matter which side you bring the variables on. So remember the paths you take. As long as you get at some point you get the variable by itself. Which side do you want to bring the variables on? Tell me something, guys.
The right.
The right, okay. So if I'm going to bring the variables to the right side, that means I need to get rid of this 14x. Is adding 14x going to help? Is adding 14x going to help? No, because 14x plus 14x, 28x. It's not going to help. So you're going to subtract 14x from both sides. So 14x and a negative 14x is 0. So what's left over here? 7. That's what I have. All right, now, what's a negative x and a negative 14x? Is it 15? Negative 15. So negative 15x. So negative 1x and a negative 14x is a negative 15x. All right, now how do you get x by itself? Divide both sides by what?
Negative 15.
Negative 15, good. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 15. Negative 15 divided by negative 15 is what number? 1 times x is x, and then your answer is just what? Negative 7/15? That's your answer. Okay, negative 7/15. Okay. All right, let's do number, let's see. All right, let's do 60. I'm gonna go ahead and make this one up. All right, so this is it could be example. Okay, so we have 2 times 3x minus 1 minus 5. Now I'm gonna make it just minus in parentheses, x plus 6 equal x, that's just x right here, not 5, that's x, equals x minus 2/3 plus 3/5. Okay, so a bunch of things in here, a bunch of concepts.
Still writing it down, hold on.
Huh?
Still writing it down.
All right, step 1. Okay, so what do I get here? 6x minus 2. All right, now be careful with this one. What do I get here? Minus 6. Good, because you're distributing a negative 1. Okay, I'm going to write everything else over, because the first thing I want to do is just use distributive property. So I'm writing everything else over. Okay, so that's where I'm at. Okay, now what's the next step? All right, let's do with the left-hand side for right now. What can I combine on the left side? Left side. The variables. So what's 6x subtract x? 5x. What about your constants? Which is negative 8. So on the left side, I have 5x minus 8. Okay? Equal? All right, now on the right side, I'm going to use a calculator with that one. All right, now, here are my constants. In the calculator, though, what do I type in first? Negative 2/3. I'm glad you said negative 2/3. I was hoping no one would say 2/3. Because this term is not 2/3. Remember, one of the worksheets was if you listed terms. The purpose of listing the terms was for things like this on that worksheet. So the term here is negative 2/3. So you can say negative 2 divided by 3 plus 3 divided by 5, and then do what? Equal, and then do what? Second, PRB, equal, and there's your fraction. So on the right-hand side, we get x minus what? 1/15. Okay, so I have 5x minus 8 equals x minus 1/15. So this problem has everything in it that we talked about. Okay, now notice I have variable on both sides, constant on both sides. So this is the linear equation. We're only dealing with linear equations in here. So let's bring the variables to one side. It's easier to bring the variables to which side? The left. All right, so am I going to, so that means I got to get rid of this term here. Is adding x or subtracting x going to help? Subtract. What's the next step? Combine like terms. That's 5x minus x. Okay, good. Very good. 1/15. Now, if you're not careful, some of you would have said 1/15. So it's negative 1/15. All right, 2 more steps, we're almost done. What's the next step? We don't want any like terms combined. Huh?
Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other.
So tell me what the next step is, though. Add 8 to both sides. Thank you. Add 8 to both sides. And then, now that's the additional property of equality. What's the next step? Combine like terms. So what's on the left? All right, let's use a calculator with that one. So what do you punch into your calculator? Negative 1 divided by 15 plus what? 8, and then what? Equal. And you get that, then you just press what? Second, PRB, press what? equal, and notice this time it's written as a what?
Mixed number.
As a what?
A mixed number.
Oh, okay. I think you said English number. A mixed number, yes.
7 and 4 15.
7 and 14 fifteenths, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now you want to rewrite this back as an improper fraction. So you got to say 15 times 7 plus 14. What's going to be the numerator? 119 in the denominator? 15. Very good. So that's all stuff you had last semester. So that's what this is right here. So that's 4x equal what? 119 divided by 15. One more step. What's the next step? Divide both sides by 4. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this here. Just like this, just like I'm doing. 4 divided by 4? 1 times x? All right, now remember, you're dividing fractions. So it's the fraction in the numerator. What's the fraction in the numerator? Times the reciprocal of the fraction in the denominator. 1/4. You cannot reduce, so just multiply numerators. Numerator is easy. What's the numerator? Okay, what's 15 times 4? 60. There's your answer. So that's your solution. 119 divided by 60. So there's a lot of stuff here in these two sections that are in here. So that's kind of like a good review there. Wait until we get into those fractions. All right, now next section, we're going to have fractions, and some of you wanted to multiply both sides when we did those problems with a fraction in it, like d divided by 5. You want to multiply both sides by 5. That's the easiest way to do it, multiply by 5. But that's the next section, so I need you to be able to know how to do it both ways. Okay, now there are a couple of word problems that we need to talk about in this section, but we're going to do that next class period. What I want to do is give you the worksheets for those that we're able to do. And then you're going to do those worksheets. Just have 15 minutes. So you do those worksheets in here, or starting in here.